Hi guys, it's Mr. J. I'm grading my essays and trying to get caught up with all my comments to you, but I've run across a little thing that I'm kind of glad about that we have the chance to talk about and kind of like disturbed with. So let me show you. This is a response to one of these. You may or may have gotten it. I had several of these that I wrote by hand. You probably have like maybe even tried to Google some of this stuff, I would imagine, but you realize now that I'm writing this stuff myself. That takes a lot of time. So I'll just put that out there. And you've had a lot of practice that other school districts have not. So that's kind of cool. Here's the response. Let's read through it, shall we? The prompt says, describe the visual characteristics of the specific structure shown that were considered innovative for its time. Using specific visual evidence from the interior view shown, explain how its spatial design demonstrates the influence of sacred Christian architecture from an earlier era. Using specific visual evidence and/or contextual evidence from the exterior view shown, explain how its decorative program departs from established traditions in sacred Christian architecture. Then using specific contextual evidence, explain why changes in sacred architecture occurred both at this distinct time and at this particular place. So let's begin with the visual characteristics, okay? Student says the Chartres Cathedral was simple and early Gothic facade. The windows are quite small, and the first story windows recall the Romanesque. Under the rose window, there are three large lancets and vertical windows that reflect the portals below them. The portals are covered with sculpture. This sounds like great visual evidence. Kind of excited about the fact that there's lancets and portals and rose window all in the first line. This student really knows their stuff about Gothic architecture. Then I come into this discussion about how things are the same as early Christian architecture. Tall vertical nature of the interior pulls the viewer's eyes up to the ceiling as symbolically to heaven. The first story windows recall the Romanesque as they are rounded. Chartres Cathedral is the first church to have the flying buttress as part of its original design, as earlier churches retrofitted the buttresses after the building was designed. The right spire is from 1160, while the left spire is, I assume, that is late Gothic. Okay, this is a lot of specificity here. The student really knows their stuff. That first sentence there really that's almost a poetic way to write something, don't you think? The tall vertical nature of the interior pulls the viewer's eyes up to the ceiling as symbolically to heaven. Wow. I'm thinking at this point, yeah, they get T1 and T2. Let's move on and see what else they say. The rose window is filled with Old Testament scenes rather than of Jesus, unlike other churches at the time. I'm not so sure that's correct, but the entire church is a Marian shrine, as her tunic worn as Jesus' birth was found here. The enlarged chevet. When did I teach you guys what a chevet was? I don't think I ever said that word. That's interesting. I wonder where that word is coming from. The enlarged chevet allowed for more elaborate church ceremonies, which were uncommon during the Gothic era. Everything from the revaulting to lancets and spires added to the verticality of the building, emphasizing the up. This is the first church that incorporated flying buttresses as their design. Kind of getting repetitive here, using that over and over again. This is really interesting. I don't know where that word came from because it's not in my notes, and I don't think it's in Miss Russell's notes. Let's go on. In France, the monarchy was becoming more centralized, allowing for peace and prosperity for the entire country. Wow. I don't think I talked about that until we got to Louis XIV at Versailles. So that's really when absolutism in my mind becomes a super thing. I guess I talked a little bit about, Queen Blanche and St. Louis the Ninth. So okay, we'll let that go. There was an increase in wealth. Okay. The economies were growing well and people were happier as the church and state was one at the time. People being satisfied with their king reflected positively on the church. So the king had more money. I mean, this is a lot of context here. And then they talk about Chartres Cathedral, commissioned after Mary's tunic war. Okay, this gets a little muddy. Giving birth survived after everything's fire. The French took it as a sign to rebuild this. Okay, all right. So I think I've got like place and time. I'm really curious about that. And I wonder kind of where I might find some information on Gothic architecture. But if I look inside, oh, look, there's a whole chapter on Gothic architecture. I wonder what Barron'S has to say. Let's find out. So here in the historical background, it starts off with a nice little 1, 2, 3, 4 list. And I see, Centralized monarchy. Oh, I think I've heard that before. Increasing growth and wealth of cities. Oh boy. Gradual development of money economy, the emergence of schools in Paris. Okay, this looks like a red flag. I'm hoping I don't find anything else. Maybe it was just, something off of Khan Academy that found its way into the essay. Surely there's not another word here that's been copied. Uh-oh, there's Chevette. Okay, so I guess we now know where information's coming from. Look, here's a nice list: rib vault, bays, rose window, pointed arch. I bet if a student talked about those things in order, it might be kind of a problem, right? Because we would know, hey, they just looked at 1, 2, 3, 4. That's worth college credit, don't you think? Turn the page here. Let's take a look at what it says specifically about Chartres Cathedral. There's dates. 1194. I saw that in the essay. Oh, Bright Spires, 1160. Mary's tunic, worn at Jesus' birth. Marian shrine, Chevette. All right. I'm pretty convinced at this point the student has no idea what they're talking about with Gothic, or they just got desperate and decided, hey, he'll never know. That's really frustrating considering the amount of time that I spent trying to write something that was legitimately on target for this exam. But let's go on. Lots of information here about decoration, portals, jam statues, upright, rigid, rich. Okay, so that goes on and on and on. You have a lot of information there on Gothic architecture. How cool that Barron'S did that. Let's see how much of this is actually legitimately going to get you credit on this exam coming up on Friday. Chartres Cathedral has a simple and early Gothic facade. Okay, I'll let that go. The windows are quite small, and the first story windows recall the Romanesque. Okay, under the rose window, there are 3 large lancets and vertical windows that reflect the portals below them. The portals are covered with sculpture. Let's see. I'm going to check this out. Portals. Against the wall. Gothic state cotton progress away from the wall. Okay, as Gothic advances, we're going to 3-dimensional. It's also a change in the subject matter. Saint Denis, St. Columns appear to imitate the verticality, but okay. So you see, you've kind of raised a cloud of suspicion now. I don't even know if I can count portals and rose windows and things like that as your legitimate stuff. But all right, 3 portals linked by lintels. Yeah, okay, we'll let that first paragraph go. The tall vertical nature of the interior pulls the viewer's eyes up to the ceiling is symbolically to heaven. Okay, I know I've seen that before. Look at there. Tall vertical nature of the interior pulls the viewer's eyes up to the ceiling and symbolically to heaven. So I'm just going to X that out. That's not any original thought. First story windows were called the Romanesque as they are rounded. I don't think that's true. They're actually arched, so that's incorrect. Chartres Cathedral is the first church to have the flying buttress as part of its original design, as earlier churches retrofitted. Okay, maybe so. I don't know. Looking around here, I see some information on that. This is hard to figure out what's actually legitimate. The right spire, I don't think that's legitimate. Rose windows filled with Old Testament scenes rather than of Jesus, so like churches at the time. Yeah, I don't think that's even correct. All of this is about Christ and Mary. The entire church is a Marian shrine. Okay, I saw that in the book. I can show you, just in case you're wondering. Mary's tunic worn at Jesus' birth, Marian shrine, 1194. There's a lot of information there, right? Okay, the enlarged Chevette. No, that's not even legitimately you. Everything from the rib vaulting to lancets and spires added to the verticality of the building. Verticality was like all over the place. Emphasizing the up. That might have been original, but it's attached to stuff that's totally fake. So take that. This is the first church that incorporated flying buttresses as the design. Now, I think that's already been in there before, so I'm just going to get rid of that. All right, in France, the monarchy was becoming more centralized. That came right out of Barron'S. There was an increase in the wealth of cities and towns. Okay, that came out of Barron'S. Economies were growing well. People were happier. As church and state were one at the time. People being satisfied the king, but positively in the church. As the king had more money, he could spend. Okay, this is pulling from Barron'S. And then this is pulling from Barron'S. Okay, so what am I left with? Maybe a 1. That's discussing innovative features, so we're still talking about 1. Economies were growing well. People were happier. As the church and state was one at the time. People being satisfied with their king reflected positively on the church. That might be part of a T5. Okay. I'm going to tell you one thing. If this shows up with just a simple search by Mr. J, College Board is going to go forget about it. Okay. And it will basically be a no score, and you'll have a mark on your record for the rest of your life. So I'm really, really glad this happened so we could talk about it now and not later when it's really much more painful and expensive. So, guys, listen, if you're using Barron's, you got to know that's going to be in the plagiarism checker. I promise you, it's out there. It's too easy. That's what kids are going to do all over the place. That's just too simple. If you want to go back to notes that are legitimate, go back to Mr. J's notes. Go back to the notes that Miss Russell gave us from her annotated pages I've left for you on Canvas to print off and to have. Those are students talking in their own words. That's the teacher talking in their own words. And I'm sure if you paraphrase from that, it's going to sound legitimate. I mean, if you're that desperate to pull from Barron's for a simple 5-pointer like this on something that's obviously pretty clear as Gothic, then we've got bigger problems coming up on Friday. And I just wanted you to know, if Mr. J can find it, I know College Board can find it. So maybe we better rethink this process and use anything else but Barron's as notes on Friday. How about that? Okay. Just a word to the wise. If I can catch it, I know they can catch it.